Networking is an investment in your business. It takes time, and when done correctly, can yield great results for years to come. That is a quote by Diane Helbig. Welcome to Trina Talk. This is the podcast where guests share their stories of pursuing their passions, living a fulfilled life, and empowering others. Each week, I talk with inspiring leaders, business owners, and people with amazing stories from around the world in unscripted conversations as they share their successes and failures. This podcast is all about empowering you to keep striving in your personal and professional life. I am your host, Trina L. Martin. Welcome to episode 171. I am delighted to announce that I'll be speaking at Women in Tech, Texas on 19th through the 20th of May, 2022. This event offers an immersive educational experience for like-minded women to access proven strategies and tools to support them in their mission to achieve their career goals. Registration is now open. Book your pass today and secure a 15% discount with my special discount code, and that code is WITTSPEAKER15. And the website is www.women-in-tech-texas.com. The topic of this week's episode is Connected Sponsorship. My guest this week is Sheila Farragher-Gemma. Sheila moved to the States in 1989 for a job in Boston. She figured she would stay a few years before returning home to Ireland, but 30 years later, with a husband, 2 children, and a handful of successful businesses under her belt, she may be here to stay. Sheila has an entrepreneurial spirit, which led her to the world of marketing consulting. Through her company, Connected Sponsor, she helped event promoters monetize their events by building long-standing relationships and partnerships with sponsoring companies. Some events she's helped are Traffic and Conversion, ProfitCon, Underground, and MFA Live. Hi, Sheila. Welcome to Trina Talk.
Hey, Trina. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you for being on. How I start out the show is I ask all my guests to tell the listener who you are and what made you the Sheila that you are today.
So hopefully you've no Australian guests because I'd just be another Sheila. So my name is Sheila Farragher-Gemma. Sheila FG is usually what people call me. And I have been an entrepreneur ever since my daughter was born about 25 years ago. I desperately did not want to work anymore. I wanted to be home with her. So that kind of led me on an entrepreneurial journey that kind of had a winding road. But for the last 10 years, I've worked with event owners to help them secure sponsors for their events. And then in the last year, I've kind of pivoted to teaching that and coaching on that more than just doing the actual work. So that's kind of like a very short synopsis of my story.
Great. And I'm glad to have you on because we were talking in the pre-show is I've never had anyone on to talk about sponsorship, and being a podcast host and a speaker, international speaker, sponsors and events are very important to me. So
right.
Let's talk about that because what is actual sponsorship? Let's start with that because I know some of the listeners may be wondering what that is.
Yeah, so sponsorship is, it kind of comes in a couple of different varieties, but basically, like if we're thinking about events, it's companies that are going to come in and help you support the event financially. And what they're getting out of it is they're getting access to your audience as well. So they'll probably be there, they'll show up with a booth. They'll sometimes speak on stage also, depending on what the sponsorship arrangement is. But it's a really nice relationship between sponsor, the host, and the audience. So if you think of a lot of events, people are looking for a transformation. So they're at the event and they're looking to either learn something about business or invest in real estate or learn how to do a different technique, something like that. So they're there looking for a transformation, and the person running the event can give them all of that. But what they can give them in addition is all of these resources. So I think of it almost like a mall, that you're in a ballroom, you're learning about something, you walk out the doors into this mall of all these resources that you can use to further you along your path as well. And then as the host, it's, a double benefit. You're not only bringing value to your students, but you're also bringing value to your students, but you're also getting paid to run your event as well, which is great because events are really expensive. As you know, if you're an international speaker, the $200 gallon of coffee and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, and that's interesting you speak about that, because there are conferences where you can buy booths to set up your stuff, whether you're a vendor, you have goods to sell, books or whatever that case may be. And then there's from the actual being the person putting on the event, that side of it. So can you give us some pros and cons to each of those?
Yeah, so I don't see a lot of cons really. Like the thing to think about, like, so if you're the person putting on the event, the thing to think about is that you're trying to curate an experience for your event attendees. So you want to make sure that you're bringing quality in. And what I mean by quality isn't necessarily like a quality company, but quality for them. So if you're learning about real estate and, a company about how to repair cars comes in, that's not going to be a good fit. So you want to make sure that you're really curating that whole experience for your attendee and bringing in companies that will help them get further in what they're looking to do. And then for the sponsors as well, like it's a great way to get in front of their target market. So if they, if we use real estate again, if they work with realtors or real estate investors, and that's like a good customer for them, it's great to get in front of, 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever size the event is of that type of person, because they're growing their business that way also. Does that make sense?
That makes great sense.
Yeah.
So with you, would I contact you and say, okay, Sheila, I'm putting on XYZ event and this is my audience. Would you then go find other sponsors to, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's basically what I've done for the last 10 years. Okay. I'm actually really moving away from that now. Okay. So I'd be more likely to say to you, well, Trina, who do you have in your office who could do this for you, and let me train them and teach them how to do it. And then you have that resource forevermore. Amen. So it's, I do still have some clients that I do sponsor work for. I just don't do as much as I used to do. It's a lot of travel. It's a lot of things that I kind of don't want in my life anymore. So I've made a decision to kind of go in this direction. But yeah, it's when you're saying that you haven't had somebody on for sponsorship before, it doesn't surprise me because there's not a lot of me out there. It's really, when people hear what I do, their first thing is, oh, could you do that for me? And it's like, I would love to say yes to everyone, but it's just almost impossible. So that's my hope, is that I'm going to create all of these like mini me's, like sponsor heroes who are going to go out and do gigs and work for other event owners or podcast owners or whatever it is, and help them find sponsors as well. So that was my whole thought behind putting together the product and creating all of that.
And you're, like you said, there's not many of you. So let's talk about what you're doing now as far as the training. How does that work? Because when I think of being an event sponsor or what you have done, I think about somebody who must have a massive database, a massive Rolodex. Is that what you're training? Does someone have to have that to get started? Or how are you training them? Where do they need to start? What kind of experience do they need to have behind them?
Yeah. So having a Rolodex is going to be great, but you're not going to start out with a Rolodex. Right. So a lot of what I train is, the first thing I always train is just kind of low hanging fruit. How do you find some low hanging fruit sponsors? And I actually have that for everyone who's listening. We'll talk about it at the end, but it's just a really quick way to find some sponsors and kind of get traction. But I teach them kind of the whole thing from start to finish of, how do you figure out what sponsors are going to be good for the event? How do you reach out to them? How do you bring them in? How do you manage them at the event? How do you resell them into other events, just kind of keeping that whole relationship. It's all about relationships. At this point, when I go to sponsors, it's like they trust me. And if I bring them an event, they know I'm bringing them the event because I see something in that event that's going to work for them. And if it wasn't, I wouldn't. So it's building that relationship with a bunch of clients, and it takes a little while to get going with that. But then it starts to happen quickly, and that's what I teach, is how to make that happen quicker for yourself, so that you're really kind of able to do this as a full-time business, if that's what you'd like to do, or as a thing for just your own event.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I know you said you got into this, became an entrepreneur because you wanted more time with your family,
right,
at home.
Yep.
But what did you do beforehand, and what made you turn into doing this? Because originally you were the person doing it. Now you're training. Was that what you've done all the time?
It's not what I've done all the time. So I've been doing this for about 10 years. I've been out on my own for about 25 years. So I've actually had several businesses. I've had 2 that I've sold, which is pretty cool to have an exit, or 2 exits. I had one that kind of blew up in my face, which wasn't so cool, but I survived that as well. The whole sponsorship thing kind of started by accident. I was in business with a woman called Deanna Rogers, who we had this group called Affiliate Mastermind Group. So we would bring affiliate marketers together and help them, learn how to kind of do the job, how to find affiliates, kind of like sponsorship, is just a different vein. And towards the end of that business, she got recruited out of the business by Digital Marketer, which is a big marketing company over here. They run an event called TNC, which is actually happening at the moment. And when that happened, she asked me if I would come in to help her with sponsors for TNC, which I did. And then when other people saw what I was doing, they asked me if I could do that for them too. So that's really kind of how that piece of it started. Prior to that, like I say, I had a real estate business. I had a kids indoor playground, of all things. That was one of the ones I sold. And I had the first one I started when Aisling was born I did a toner remanufacturing business that I had for about 8 years, and ended up selling that one as well. So it seems like very kind of, there is a thread that kind of links them all, but it seems like very, very diverse kind of different things that I did. But I joke and say, someday I'll figure out what I want to be when I grow up and be that.
Well, you're doing well because you've had 2 businesses you sold. So
yeah.
It works well for you. So, I mean, I'm very interested in this, the whole training on sponsorship, because I know some of the stuff that goes behind putting on events. And what my ultimate goal is within the next couple of years is I would like to put on a retreat.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I know that's going to be something that it's going to take a lot of work and studying on. So you training people, like you said, you don't have to have a Rolodex, but this is definitely a relationship-based business. So you have to, you have to know how to foster those relationships. Mm-hmm. So in your teaching, are you, and I hate to say it this way, but are you teaching or looking for a certain personality? Because let's face it, there are people who say, oh yeah, I would love to do that. But then you think you don't have the personality for it. So is that something that you go in and say?
I guess it is kind of personality. Like, I'm actually quite introverted and I do well with this. So it doesn't have to be someone who's, gregarious and fun, right. And, I think what it is kind of like a high say-do ratio. So what I mean by that is when somebody says they'll do something, they'll do it. Right. So a high level of kind of personal responsibility, that because you're creating these relationships, but they're really based on trust. So you want to show up and say what you're going to do, do what you say. Oh my God, I can't even say it straight. Do what you say you'll do. And just really kind of be there for them. And then if something goes wrong, be there as well. Like, I mean, don't hide from it. Just be like, okay, this is what's happening. I told you, 400 people for this event. It looks like 200 people. Let's figure out how we can make that up to you. And always kind of be proactive and be ahead of anything. I think is the important thing. So having that type of a person, like, I think it's more of an ethic than a personality. So I've seen people who are very outgoing doing this. I've seen people who are very shy doing this. But I think it's more of just having that like really strong work ethic and just kind of trust ethic that is important.
Mm-hmm. And that's a key, is the trust,
Yeah.
because when you're putting on an event, you're spending a lot of money, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
money. And you want someone who's going to be there so when you say, whatever, this ended up being a catastrophe, or this is not
Yeah.
working so well, you want someone who can to rectify that.
Yeah.
And, you just talk about some of those things that go into that training process, and the things that people, so if we have some listeners, if they're saying that's something I would like to do, what are some of the um, first hand tips that you would give them, the things that they would need to first go for if they're thinking about pursuing that kind of career?
Yeah, so I give them a lot of the tools that I've used myself. So, a lot of kind of checklists and, emails that I send out and things like that. I kind of um, have part of the project is like a look over my shoulder. This is how I do it, and this is how you can do it too. And they'll probably come up with even better ideas. I'm usually pretty simple the way I do things, but it's just to kind of give them the broad range of what's involved in it, but the also to be able to pivot and just be creative in their thinking. So if somebody's unhappy about something, let's figure out how we can make them happy. So if a sponsor doesn't like where his booth is, let's get him moved into somewhere else. Let's maybe do something that will drive some people to his booth, maybe have an open bar at the booth that night or something, or whatever it takes to kind of make everyone happy. That's what they're going to remember. And then just kind of the honesty thing as well, is just be upfront with people all the time. And, because, events as well, like, I mean, you can have especially now in COVID, you can have the best plans in the world and they just start falling apart. And, I think if you are upfront with people, you tell them immediately and you just show that you're there and genuine and you want to work with them. I think that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, what have you seen in your experience, and how many? So, I'm sorry. Let me go back. So, with your training program, is this an online, virtual? Are you training people in person? Because
it's both. Yeah. So I have an online training course that people can take. I'm also launching a program called Train Your Sponsor Person, which is, so just to kind of back up a little bit, I'm thinking, and I may the avatar that is going to look for somebody like me is somebody who runs an event, who's very entrepreneurial, who doesn't necessarily want to learn how to do it themselves. They just want to get it done for them. My thought is that they will probably have somebody in their office that they want to kind of hand this over to, who will need a lot of help to get started with it. I'm actually working on one event right now for November where I'm just working one-on-one with a gal and just teaching her kind of what it is that I do. And it's great because it's actually given me insight as well as I'm putting this together. Sometimes we forget like what we were like when we were starting. So sometimes things that just seem very natural to us now is like, of course, you always do this like this, but you didn't always do it like that. Right. You had to learn it. So it's great to kind of hear, and it kind of puts me in the frame of mind of somebody who may be teaching this, who may be learning this stuff from me, to kind of simplify it even more rather than just kind of making the assumption that, well, they'll know this, because a lot of times they don't, because they haven't done it before. So
right.
It's yeah. So yeah. A lot of back and forth. I mean, I'm still kind of learning as I go as well. So.
Yeah. And I think that's the hardest. And that's hard for me too, because when you know something, to actually transfer that to teach someone else, that's exactly the hard thing.
Because you become unconsciously competent. So you just do it, and you don't, like, it's like driving a car. Mm-hmm. Like you don't get into the car and figure out which pedals are which and where the gear shift. You just get in and drive and end up somewhere, and you don't even remember how you got there most of the time. So that's like the way I feel like with sponsorship now as well. So to kind of step back and say, okay, how did I actually remember this? Or what's the story of how I learned this, and kind of pull all that together. That's what's been kind of interesting, and, trying to really make things simple enough that I can teach it and people will understand it. It's not that it's like super difficult, but there are things that you just kind of take for granted.
Yeah. And it's funny because this just popped in my head, and I know this is probably not what you have in your mind, but I was thinking something like you having a bureau almost of people who can be sponsors.
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Because like, I mean, all the time, literally as soon as I tell somebody what I do, they're like, "Oh my God, can you do that for me?" It's like the first question.
Right.
And I would love to have, I call them in my head event heroes, just have like this little army of event heroes. And I can just pop it out and say, "Hey, someone has an event in Orlando in, 6 months time. And it's about whatever the topic is. Who wants it? Who wants the referral?
Right.
And just kind of get them going and get them doing it." I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, that was because I'm thinking about myself as far as this retreat that I have in my mind.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love to, have someone that I could say, okay, this is what I'm looking for doing, and that could come in and said, okay, well, here's the location, or this is what I can do. This is how I can have you set up, because I'm just thinking about all of that.
That might be a second. So there's also like an event planner occupation as well. And I actually have a bunch of those. I can tell you offline. I can get you in touch with some people who will really be good at helping you with that retreat. So there's two kind of different components. So the event planner is somebody I work with, very tightly at an event, because they're planning the whole event and, where everything's going to be and where the receptions are, and then what the food and beverage budget is and all that kind of stuff. So then I can kind of plug into what they're doing and saying, well, we could probably get somebody to sponsor that. And maybe what can we have them maybe come in and give a talk at a breakfast or and that we kind of work very much hand in hand. But it's definitely a different skill. I think you're probably looking for both. You're probably looking for an event planner to help you plan the event.
Yes.
And then a sponsor coordinator to help you plan the sponsorship as well and get the event paid for. Which would be awesome.
Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what I need. And with the sponsorships and I'm just thinking, I'm trying to form it in the correct way. But you see the events and you say, okay, like most events say, okay, this event is sponsored by Google or whatever.
Yep.
So with the people you're training them to say, okay, approach these companies and ask them if they would mind sponsoring with group A. Would this be worth their time? Is that exactly what you're doing? Okay.
It's kind of like that. So basically the way the conversation goes with the company is, tell me what is he doing? Who are you looking to be in front of? What are your goals for this year? I have a group of X. Is that something that would be interesting to you? So, again, I use real estate all the time, but I have a group of realtors or a group of real estate investors who are hungry for your product. Is that something that you think you'd like to be in front of? So it really is that kind of relationship type of thing that, they're going to be all about what's in it for me. So you want to tell them what's in it for them.
Right.
To build value and have them come in and sponsor the event. And then if you make it great, it's like it repeats itself year after year, because if I brought you somewhere where you've got a whole bunch of business, you'd probably want to come back again every single time, right?
Right. So starting out, when you're asking this company to be a sponsor, is there a cost for them or the person, or are they just basically writing it off, hoping that they'll get future business?
Yeah, so there is a cost for them to sponsor, and it depends on the event and how many people and how long the event's been established. And there's kind of a whole piece of that to figure out as well. And they are taking a little bit of a risk, because they could get there and end up not having any business. We're going to try and make it so that they are, it's a good event for them in terms of who the people are who are there, and that they need their product or they need their service or whatever it is that they do, but that's the whole piece of curating it as well. We want to make it win-win for everyone. Right. So again, you don't want to bring in a sponsor that is just not going to do well there, because it's, people are just not going to need what they have. So you want to make sure that you kind of work it that way to make sure that everyone kind of wins with it.
Okay. Now, who are the people who would be seeking out your training program? Is there any certain demographic? Are there more women than men?
Yeah, possibly more women. I think I kind of have three avatars of who I think would want to do this. The first, as I said, is an event owner who probably isn't going to do it themselves. They're probably going to have somebody on their team do it. The second one is event planners who maybe want to add another stream of income onto what they're doing. So they're planning the event already. If they have this kind of Rolodex of sponsors that they've built up, they can bring in sponsors. I've actually had instances where, I've gone out looking to sponsor or looking to do sponsorship for an event and come up against an event planner who does that as well. And it's more attractive to the event owner. Like I can get one person to do both type of thing. And then the third one, which is kind of dear to my heart, is because this is what I was. This is my whole journey started with being a mom, being a new mom and not wanting to go back to a 9 to 5 job. It felt like 95 hours. Not wanting to go back to a 9 to 5 job and wanting to, be there with my kid and go to all the, the soccer matches or the dance recitals or the school lunches, or if she was sick that I'd be home with her, all of that kind of stuff. So, I feel like this is a great business for a mom to take on as well, because it's really, you can do it from anywhere. I literally work on a phone and a computer. We had a computer issue getting on here. Better computer is in my future. But yeah, you can do this from anywhere. It's fun to go to events. The travel is fun. It's just a really great business if you want to just kind of have that freedom to do it on your own time.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, that is just, it's exciting for me thinking that, I need to find, I need to find that. Not that I want to do it. Maybe that'll be another arm of my business maybe later on or something.
Yeah.
Because I do like to travel, and I do like forming the relationships, even though I am an introvert at heart, like you say you are. Just the connecting. I like doing that as well.
Yeah. Well, it's connecting with your people as well. It's like when I walk into a room of entrepreneurs, it's like they get me. It's not like, it just, and I just love that. Like the conversation is a lot easier, even as an introvert, because you're talking the same language. Mm-hmm. It's so different to like if you walk into like a family party and they're like, "Oh, you haven't got a job yet? What are you doing?" It's just so different.
And how long is your training?
So the training, it depends. There's like different components. So you can come in and take a little or a lot. Mm-hmm. Like the one that I'm going to do at the end of this is literally about 15 or 20 minutes, but it's something that's made to give you like really quick results, because it's just something super simple to find sponsors. I have, again, I'm like kind of at the start of this. One of my plans is to have a membership site. I would love to, you mentioned retreats. I would love to end up having a mastermind, which we'll probably do a retreat somewhere cool as well. And, it's the sky's kind of the limit. So we'll see how that goes.
Wow. Very interesting. I mean, we can go on talking about this because I have a lot of questions to pick your brain.
Sure. Yeah.
This episode is being sponsored by True Vision. Have you lost hope in starting your business? Lost steam, or just do not know where to go from here? See with True Vision and define your path. The True Vision Project seeks to heal, rebuild, and transform your online business from the inside out. For more information and early access for only Trina Talk listeners into the True Vision Project, send an email to connect@definingpaths.info. Make sure to mention that you heard about it on Trina Talk. But I'm not gonna hold you. I'm gonna go into our questions. Are you ready?
I think so. I'm kind of a little scared, I'll be honest. 10 questions that I don't know what they are.
I know everybody says that, but you're gonna do fine. Yeah. Okay. Who or what motivates you?
Oh my goodness. Having an impact motivates me, I think. Just knowing that by doing something that I'm having a positive impact, that I can make a difference. That really motivates me. Also, starting things. I'm definitely a starter. I'm always like looking at things like a bit kind of like, butterfly, but just always looking to seeing how business works. Like, how could I make that difference? What could I do with that? So that definitely motivates me as well. It just gets me excited. Talking about business gets me excited. I love business, I guess.
What demotivates you?
Being undervalued. People not valuing what I am. And sometimes I bring that on myself as well by not like standing up for myself. That's more the introvert stuff. But yeah, being undervalued really motivates me.
When was a time that something was said or done to hurt you, but it worked for your good?
Wow. I can't think of a specific thing, but usually if something like that happens, it usually kind of maybe either forces me or So first of all, if it's something that I think that is wrong, then I'll like really prove them wrong or prove them wrong by doing it. So that kind of is a motivation in itself as well, which sounds weird. Um, yeah, I think like people telling me I can't do stuff is usually what will motivate me to do it. Like, really?
Me too.
Yeah.
What is your fear?
Um, my fear is not being there for my kids, not being there for my family. Just I always want to be present and be there. Life has really kind of started to speed up as we get older.
Yes.
So a big fear of mine is like it's going too fast. I haven't done enough. It's it's not time yet type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's a big one I've been dealing with for a while. Is just the how fast everything is going.
Is there a time when you wish you had done something that you didn't?
There's probably lots of times with that. I tend to be more of I wish I hadn't done something that I did because I tend to be pretty I will, yeah, if I get an idea, I'll usually either run with it straight away or just not do it. I'll talk myself out of it. So I tend to just run with things straight away. So sometimes I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done that or said that or sent that email or whatever. So it's kind of more the opposite of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, that was the next question.
Oh.
So since you semi-answered that, we'll go on to the next one.
Okay.
What is your definition of success?
Being happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you recharge being this busy lady?
A lot of different ways. Sometimes just a change in what I'm doing. Like I walk a lot in nature. That really kind of recharges me. Sometimes I will just take a day and like veg out in front of the TV and not think about anything. And at the end of the day, I feel awful because I just feel like I've done nothing and I felt lazy and I get depressed. But then I wake up the next morning, I'm like, okay, let's go. What are we doing?
Yeah.
So sometimes I just, because I do a lot.
Okay. What are you awesome at?
What am I awesome at? That's a tough question. I think I'm awesome at seeing creative ideas that maybe other people don't see. Like I'm really good at connections with people. So I can walk into a room and it's almost like I see this imaginary, like neon sign going from one person's head to another that like they should connect together because she does this and he does that. And that would be, and they just don't think of it themselves. So a lot of times I'll do that and people think I'm weird for making the introduction and then they'll get and they're like, oh wow, I would never have known that. So that's kind of, I'm a big connector.
Okay. What legacy do you want to leave?
The legacy I want to leave is really just, I just imagine people telling stories of me that were just kind and, this, that people kind of enjoyed being in my presence, that I, wasn't like a mean person, I guess. My kids are already my legacy. They're grown now. They're just really, they've become like amazing adults with great careers and just very happy. So that's, to me, is a huge thing because that was like such a huge thing for me starting out to make that happen. And it has, and they're friends with us. They like to hang out with us, which is great. That usually doesn't happen with, 20 something year olds, but yeah.
So give the listeners one motivational takeaway.
So one of my favorite sayings is seek the swift sword. And what I mean by that is if you're going to die in your sword, let's do it quickly and move on. So if something's going to be a mistake, rather than spending months and months and months of figuring out, should I do it? Should I not do it? Let's just try it and do it. And if it doesn't work out, move on. It's okay.
So Sheila, tell the listeners how they can connect with you. Tell us about your program if they want to enroll and your website and everything you have going on.
Sure. Yep. So the website is connectedsponsors.com. And the free training I spoke about is at Finding Sponsors. So it's connectedsponsors.com/finding sponsors. Like I said, that's like a 15 or 20 minute training which just kind of stimulates your mind to start thinking in terms of who are your low hanging fruit sponsors. I'm on Facebook at Connected Sponsors. I have a page there and I have a group. If they want to come into the group, I would love that. I'm building that out at the moment. And those and on LinkedIn as well. So those are kind of my main areas where I hang out.
Okay. Well, Sheila, I thank you for coming on and talking about sponsorship. Like I said, you're the first person who has done this, and I've learned a lot, and I know the listeners have too. And if you need someone for your event, or that Sheila is grooming people to be little Sheilas, so they can
There you
help you
go.
out.
Awesome.
If you like Trina Talk podcast, please don't forget to go out to iTunes and rate it 5 stars and leave a review. Also, who else in your life do you know that needs some motivation and inspiration in their life? Don't forget to share Trina Talk with them. I hope you have a great week. And remember, if you change your mindset, you can change your life. Keep striving, because success is a journey, not a destination.